Redo? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the December 11th Government Relations and Communications Committee meeting. For introductions, we are awaiting two of our fellow committee members and our student representative, Abby. She's coming, right? Okay. So we will, while we're waiting for those folks to join us, let's have Mr. Petiti give us his administrative remarks.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. So wanted to quickly mention that the minutes that you're going to see tonight have been corrected. There were some inaccuracies in the original minutes that were posted on Friday, mostly concerning the attendees of our meeting and some information regarding bill numbers and some typos. So we corrected those and then recently posted the new version of the minutes, but just wanted everyone to know that we did catch those errors and made those corrections. Secondly, who do we have here? Okay. Secondly, last meeting, you'll recall that our student representative, Ms. Idicula, had some questions about, there she is, just in the nick of time. She had some questions regarding just general board operations, committee operations, and goals of the district and strategic plan. So I sat down, Abby and I sat down on last Friday, a nice conversation. We talked about how the committee sets goals, how the committee comes up with agenda items. I did encourage Abby to share with me prior to a couple weeks out from the meeting if she has anything that comes from the students that she wants to potentially reach the agenda. So she was encouraged by that encouragement. And we talked about the comprehensive plan. So I sent her some information on the comprehensive plan and our goals and our missions and our vision and our values. So I hope that I'm not mischaracterizing this, Abby, that we had a nice talk and you feel like me brought you up to speed a little bit on how things work. Okay, great. So the next thing is our legislative breakfast. You'll notice also in the minutes that it mentions that we did talk about January and February as the initial plan for this breakfast, but as we got to thinking about it and the fact that it was an election year and at least a few of our reps, two of our reps, won't be sworn in until the end of January, we were considering moving it to the end to March and April, so we can give them time to get settled and then get their schedules in line and then place a date in late spring or early spring. And we thought at that time we might also want to bring in our federal representatives, because we typically have our federal representatives come out to a GRCC meeting in the late spring, either them or one of their staff members, and perhaps we meld those two together and we have one larger event that has federal and state reps there. We've already looked at some dates in March and April. We know when the House is in session and we know when the Senate is in session, so we're able to work around those dates. So I just wanted to keep the committee apprised of where we are there. And then lastly, for admin remarks, tonight we had some letters that our co-chairs were so kind to sign and that I signed that are congratulating our local representatives for their election victories and letting them know more about what we are as a committee and our kind of our charge, here at the district. So we'll be mailing those out first thing tomorrow.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Michael, for all of that groundwork, for bringing Abby up to speed and getting ready for our legislative breakfast and correcting minutes. You were a busy man over the past month, so thank you very much. We appreciate that. With that, I'd like to open up public comment. Is there anybody who would like to make some public comment this afternoon? Good afternoon, Mrs. Sherry.
Judy Sherry, Governor's Circle, Newtown Square. I guess some unanswered questions from October. A lot of these are board directed at the board, so maybe that's why they're not answered. Are all board members in agreement with the noon, once a month written posting of public comment responses? And if they're not in agreement, I'd like to know which ones agree and which ones don't. Number 2, why don't board members review the responses to public comment before they are posted? Why did the responses just come apparently from the administration? Because as a member of the public, I address board members, not the administration. Number 3, do any board members monitor what is shown on the educational channel? And if so, who are they? And number 4, why wouldn't board members want a researched answer to questions and be agreeable to wait once a month for the response, since they believe this process works best for the public? And finally, number 5, I asked the question, which other districts, and I'd like to add school boards here, in Pennsylvania only respond to public comment once a month? And this comment's written by the administration. That was the question. I was really curious to see how this was working in other districts, whether we patterned our new process after another district. The response was, quote, there are many external and accessible sources members of the general public can consult to locate the information requested. So, because I'm not aware of these many external and accessible sources to consult, I would like to know specifically what these external and accessible sources are that could give the information regarding other districts which have responses written once a month by the administration. So if you could point me in the right direction with specific external and accessible sources where this could be researched, and it sounds like fairly easily, I'm anxiously awaiting that response, I guess, by noon next January before the first committee meetings. I'll be looking forward to seeing that response. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sherry. Is there any other public comment this afternoon? Good afternoon, Mrs. Spurtle.
Good afternoon. Cindy Spurtle, 106 Valley Forge Terrace, Wayne. I have a question about the timing of this meeting, the GRCC meeting, the amount of time in which allocated each month for the meeting. And there was a request made at the business meeting last week that this be extended to an hour so that everything could be covered completely. And so the reason for that is that it was so important that 15 minutes could not be added because everything had been publicized, the timing had been advertised, and that type of thing. Yet for the public who would be going to the website today, the curriculum meeting has no time schedule on it. So if the time is so very important on when the meeting begins, it's like, when is the meeting going to begin, because it doesn't have any start time for it, that we might want to consider that it's important that this meeting be a full hour. And once again, the GRC, the goals for 18-19 will be discussed again this week. And I understand in the comments that Michael Petiti just made that the communications will be ongoing each meeting, the communication goals, but the entire set of goals, this is the third month that the same slides have been posted as attachments to this meeting, and I'm just curious as to, will there be a plan similar to the 17-18 plan that was put together with steps for 18-19, since we're halfway through 18-19. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you very much, and we will cover goals. We were going to do that second, given, but our guests aren't here yet, so.
Can I just have one? It was the curriculum meeting. I had the wrong meeting. My apologies.
Okay, no problem.
For the time, I did say time.
So should we go into goals, Mr. Petiti, while we wait for our guests, or how would you
Yeah,
like
but
to
I
do
would
that?
just quickly clarify the, just to say.
But they're
that-
here? They're here. I'm sorry. Thank you, Jackie.
Oh, great. It's
Okay, go ahead. You welcome, Tomea. And Shirley behind you, or no? No, just, okay, great. Come join us at the table here,
Hey,
and
don't be shy. There we go, right there.
we're just waiting. We got it covered. We're just finishing up the previous part of our meeting, and then we'll get right to you. But in the meantime, welcome. And please get comfortable.
Hi.
Mr. Petiti, what would you like to finish?
Yeah,
up?
sure. So what I wanted to just clarify was that there are multiple locations on the website where we have listed the times for our school board meetings, and this is the case every meeting. And I would encourage the public to go to our calendar, our online calendar. That is where it does say 5 o'clock curriculum committee, 6 p.m., 6:30 policy committee. It also says it in the school board tab on our homepage. So there are multiple places where I don't know where Ms. Fertile may have located it and not found that time, but we do try to keep the calendar up to date. We'll make sure to look at that for next time. But the website's set. Just wanted to clarify.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much, Mr. Petiti. So, without further ado, you are number one on our agenda today, Tomea, not to put you right in the hot seat like that, but we want to welcome Tomea Smith to our Government Relations and Communications Committee meeting to talk to us about PA Schools work. Maybe you'd like to tell us a little bit about yourself and then go from there.
Sure. My name is Tomea Sippio-Smith.
If you just pull the microphone a little bit closer to you, Tomea,
Sure.
it might translate better. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tomea Sippio-Smith. I'm the Education Policy Director at PCCY, so it's Public Citizens for Children and Youth. We're one of the organizations that are a part of the campaign called PA Schools Work, where we advocate for better funding for schools, public schools, of course. I do have a short presentation. My office is moving, unfortunately, so the jump drive has disappeared for now, but I did email myself the presentation. I can show it to you quickly if I can access it somewhere. Sure. Indeed. And what's your email address, please?
Does that work?
Yes. Oh, sorry for the delay.
I got you. I'm going to type it and make it faster for us.
Thank you. Oh.
So, Tomea, you're ready now?
Yes, I believe so.
No, while he's pulling that
Oh,
up.
thank you.
Tomea, while he's pulling that up, maybe could you briefly just tell us in a sentence or two about PCCY and what your
Oh, sure.
organization does, aside from the PA Schools Work campaign?
Indeed, our
Thank you.
organization advocates in various fields. I'm, in education, but K-12 specifically. We have an early childhood education component, which is a pre-K for PA campaign. We're branching out now to cover the 0 through 3 age bracket, so we're hoping to get that work underway starting early next year. Additionally, we advocate for kids' health issues. So for kids who do not have health care insurance, we have a health care line that parents or guardians or anyone who's interested in getting kids covered can call or contact us, and we assist them with getting health care insurance. So we are everywhere, and we advocate for kids to make sure that their needs are met.
So just one question for you.
Sure.
So you're a nonprofit,
We are.
and people could donate to you if they were interested in helping to promote your cause?
Certainly.
And how would they be able to contact you?
Directly, you can reach me at my email address. That's probably the
Okay.
quickest way, and that's TOMEAS as in Sam @pccy.org.
Okay, and would we be able to put your PowerPoint up on our website if we desired?
Yes, I think so.
Could check with that. We would appreciate that, yes.
Indeed.
Thank you.
The only thing I would do is maybe modify my notes. Take
Right.
the notes
Oh, yeah,
out, but
yeah, yeah.
they're fine. otherwise.
Thank you.
Sure.
Now, your PowerPoint hasn't come through, and I wonder if it's because it's too large of a file. We have a certain limit here on what we can receive. So,
Okay.
and for the sake of time, would it be possible for you to present to us without the PowerPoint?
Certainly.
And of course, we can make it available after the fact. We could post it and share it accordingly.
Indeed. So I do have a lot of stuff that I can leave behind that'll give you a better picture of the campaign. However, it is a group of organizations that often advocate together for children's issues, including PSBA, PASBO, all of the other different types of organizations that are affiliated with public schools and public school officials are our partners, as well as some other nonprofit organizations. About 25 or 30 organizations are part of the campaign, the PA Schools Works campaign. Again, including organizations like PCCY, the Public Interest Law Center, who you might have read about as they're making progress with that lawsuit regarding school funding, and also the Education Law Center, as well as the Urban League and some other organizations. We're fighting specifically as a campaign for better K-12 education funding, and what that means is more money to be sent from the state through the formula and distributed among the school districts. What we are not advocating for is a reduction to any particular school district's funding source. Instead, we believe that the funding formula has not been adequately funded to this point, and it needs to have an infusion of more funds so that the money can be better distributed among the school districts in the state. Specific to Radnor, it looks like since the 2011 budget cuts from two prior administrations ago resulted in a 31% increase for special education expenditures. This is specific to Radnor School District. A 6% increase in special education costs, about a 60% change in charter school payments. And the taxpayers here in Radnor bear a significant portion of those costs. Approximately 84% of school expenditures seem to be coming from the taxpayers to fund the schools for this particular district. If the funding formula were fully funded, then Radnor School District could anticipate about $3 million extra to go towards funding things in the school district. To further illustrate, about $4 million has gone from the Radnor property taxpayers to go towards education funding, and only about $4,329,000 has come from the state in those increases. But we believe that the school districts should be better funded at the state level to take some of that stress and strain off of the taxpayers here in Radnor. So our strategies are simple. We want to, as a campaign, engage legislators, create and mobilize local advocacy networks, and to get that message out there and to amplify the voices of the community. To do that, as a campaign, we have a list of different activities that we'd ask any of the individual organizations who want to be engaged in our work to do. The first is as simple as talking to legislators with a card that says congratulations, you know, you've won the election, but these are some things that we'd like you to listen to in order to better advocate for students. The second, of course, is really engaging and mobilizing around in the community and asking the community to get behind these initiatives and go out there and say, we need better funding for public schools. And we have just a list of things and how to become an advocate in the world of advocacy if you're new to it, or if you've already been established. Because a lot of individuals, I know you're all seasoned, but a lot of individuals are not, and they don't know how to get started. So we speak with them and help to educate them on how to have effective meetings with legislators and to go out there and really speak up for our students. That's really PA Schools work in a nutshell. But if you have any other questions, I'm happy to address them.
So I'll open it up to our committee, including our student, for any questions for Tomea. I'll start maybe with Sarah over there, because you had your finger close on the mic.
Yeah, and as you said, some of us have heard this before, but I think it'd be helpful for everyone to understand. Can you explain a little bit more about the fair funding formula for everyone who's here?
Sure.
Thank you.
The fair funding formula, as it stands now, was implemented in about the 2015-2016 school year. It was the result of a lot of advocates and a lot of stakeholders getting together and saying, it's a shame that Pennsylvania is the one of 3 states that doesn't have a funding formula in place in order to fund the schools. So what it does do is look at a bunch of components that look at how the money should be distributed from the state level. No school district was to receive any less funding than it received in the 2013-2014 school year, and that's the base level. When the new money comes from the state in its budgetary allocations for basic education funding line items every school year, that additional funding comes from the state and is distributed based upon the different factors related to how the school district looks. If it's, if there's more kids in poverty, then there might be a stronger weight attached to that particular element. If it's a growing school district, then there's a weight attached to that. If it's a heavily populated school district, then there's also weights attached to it, and that determines how the new funding from the from the state is allocated amongst the 500 school districts. Sure.
Lydia, do you have some questions?
Yeah, it's really more of a comment, but it'll turn into a question. So
Sure.
a couple weeks ago, I attended a really interesting meeting for the school board presidents in Delaware County.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard a really different story about this than I had gotten from just reading legislation about this. And I will paraphrase for the rest of the committee and the community what I heard from some of the neighboring districts. I'm considering all of Delco our neighbors, is like a really dire situation in some school districts, that if this doesn't happen, they are really, they were calling it like, and I'm not being alarmist, like they're going to be bankrupt or possibly taken over by the state, like lose local control. And it's really all because of funding. It's not because the people aren't doing a good job locally. So I wonder if saying more about really how dire it is might affect a lot more people than, we can hear, we know that the funding, for example, from the federal government is not what it should be for special ed, for sure. Mm-hmm. I have heard between 10 and 15% only of the mandates for special ed are funded nationally from the federal government. I think if we could hear also about how it will affect our neighbors.
Well, certainly. I mean, there are neighboring school districts that are part of the fair funding lawsuit for that very reason. Yes, there are school districts that no matter how much they raise taxes, they'll never be able to provide students with the adequate level of funding that they need in order to not only stay afloat, but to provide students with what are considered in some school districts necessities. And it's certainly not, not specific to Delaware County. There are Bucks County school districts in the same predicament, Montgomery County, Philadelphia. All of the school districts, or all of the counties generally in the southeast, have some school districts that are facing those issues. And yes, we visited them. We've spoken to the principals at these schools, and we've spoken to the superintendents, and we see what effect that has on kids. We visited one school district that didn't even have a female gym teacher for years. They only had, a male gym teacher. There was one that had to close down the library because there was no staff to fund it. There was one student that we talked to in a different school district that said she was at level 4 Spanish, but there was no teacher to fund that level of Spanish for her, so she had to do it online, or was in a physical classroom with the students who were in their first year of Spanish. There were others that had one AP class. But aside from that, there are buildings that are crumbling. There's another school that we visited with pipes exposed, lead paint everywhere. And in fact, out of the entire state, it ranked #1 for all the physical and building needs that it had. And that school had 4th graders who we spoke to, who presented a PowerPoint, who went to speak to their legislators and couldn't understand how it was that their school wasn't adequately funded, because it was almost to the point where sewage was running down the hall. That's what kind of dire shape that school was in. And they've advocated for themselves. I mean, if you knew these 9-year-olds with tears in their eyes went to the legislators and said, how is it that we are funded so poorly when other districts are not? What makes a difference for us? Why do we matter so little to you? And that's what they said, because even they understood the gravity of the situation.
So it seems like we need to get the legislators in to see these schools is one thing. And the other thing that I think it just makes so much sense to everyone, we need to get funding for special education.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody agrees that it's the right thing to do. Well, if it's the right thing to do, then the federal government needs to pay for it. We need to go after that, like really strongly, and make our state aware that that's a big problem for all of these districts. If we could get that money, it would also relieve the state a little bit, so.
It would. I mean, the state consistently ranks in the bottom 3, bottom 4, in terms of state contribution to education. We're ranked this year, I think it's 46th, one year it's 47. I mean, it never really changes when we're looking at how the state helps to fund education. But you're right. I believe that the federal government should step up, obviously, especially for special education costs, but for public education in general.
So is that something that is maybe just too broad for your group to handle, or are you also going after that?
We're really focused on the state.
Okay.
But I know that a lot of probably individual advocates who are part of the campaign would probably say the same, that the federal government should do more.
So my last question is, what can we do to help you?
Well, there are several things. Of course, we always need advocates from districts who aren't in as dire shape to speak up, because obviously we care about educating the entire state of kids. We ask for school boards to pass resolutions that, in fact, this is the right thing to do, that every kid benefits when the state adequately funds public education, because about 90% of all kids go through the public education system. And those kids, of course, grow up to be our future employees, our future CEOs. And how well the state and its economy does is really reliant upon how well we educate the majority of the kids here.
I have to add one more thing that I did hear from some of the presidents that I met with. They said that the students in their districts felt like nobody cared about them, that it was almost like showing like these hopeful, bright, the potential of these young people, and just like cutting it off because they felt like the funding reflected that nobody cared. And so I don't know if there's any way to weave that into what you say, but just we don't want young people at the age of 10 or 8 to think that nobody cares. I mean, that is certainly not the message I want to project. So
I agree, and if you would have seen the response of the legislators to the 9-year-old's presentation, we were crying, but I can imagine that other people would have felt the same, that these kids couldn't understand why they didn't matter. They had a phenomenal teacher. Unfortunately, the teacher, said, she said, my kids deserve better. And of course, we believe that they deserve better, which is why we are advocating as a statewide campaign for these kids, because we want them to know that, of course, they matter to us.
Just in the interest of time, because this is a very obviously involved and important subject, I did want to mention to the committee that Tomea is kind enough to be coming to the Delaware County School Board's Legislative Council meeting tomorrow morning in large part because when Chuck and I attended the launch of this campaign in King of Prussia a few weeks ago, at one point during that morning effort, we were broken up into counties, and we found ourselves in a room with a number of representatives from Delaware County across a number of the school districts. And we thought, this is, interestingly, not a very common opportunity, and how can we leverage our spending time with our compatriots in other Delaware County districts to do something collectively as opposed to just on a district-by-district basis. So if it's any reassurance to you, Lydia, and to others out there, tomorrow, when we're at the School Board's Legislative Council meeting, we're going to hear the same presentation from Tomea, and we'll have a little bit more time than we do today to be able to brainstorm ways that collectively as a county we can work together to embrace the many elements of this campaign which you didn't have the time to go into today, and then maybe based on what we come up with tomorrow, we can disseminate that to our respective districts, or even continue to work collaboratively across the county and maybe hold a workshop and invite the entire community and students. Maybe we'd do a Saturday event again, like we did in King of Prussia, so that everyone can avail themselves across the county of the chance to engage in this campaign. So if it's okay with you, we'll leave it at that, and we'll see you tomorrow. And Chuck wanted to say something too, but for me, and I'm sure Chuck will echo it, and the rest of the committee, we really want to thank you, Tomea, for at least starting this conversation for us, and I'm quite sure there'll be more of this conversation to come, and I'm sorry that the time was a little limited today.
Sure.
But selfishly, I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow as well. So, Chuck?
Well, I'd just like to add, this is not your first statewide campaign. This organization is very grounded, very successful, and has done a lot for the children in the entire state. So I'd like to thank you for that. You also are blessed to have so many great people working with you and for you, and your leadership. I'm impressed with how they do things. I've attended some of your events. I was blown away by the one that you had in someplace in Philadelphia I went to. Anyway.
So many.
Yeah, but you bring in companies, and you bring in PICO or whatever their Exelon or whatever their organization was. One of the people was honored because of the things that they've been helpful with you working together to accomplish things. And we're looking at trying to make some inroads towards the own businesses that are within our school. But there's a lot of things that we can learn just by working with your guys. And we will be right there with you. And moving this forward, and I look forward to it, and I think it can be successful, and it's not something that you're just trying to do it now. You have a blueprint, you have the people in place. This was a statewide piece that we went to that was but 5 different meetings across the state. Eight, okay, 8 different meetings across the state. I was only able to get to 5 because I can't be in too many places at the same time. But anyway, I'd like to thank you for all you're doing already, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Yes, and if there's any leave-behind materials, Tomea, that you want to leave, that would be wonderful. And again, I don't want the brevity of this meeting to be in any way perceived as a lack of interest on our part. This is just the beginning, and there are more conversations to come, and I think we're all eager to engage and take this to the full board about ways that we can help advocate for the state to do even more to support public education. So thank you at least for this introduction, and we'll see you tomorrow, and I think Mr. Petiti can probably take the materials from you and give them out as needed. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Didn't mean to cut off our student representative before she goes. Are you okay before? Okay. We'll make sure you get the materials too, Abby, and we'll have some offline conversations.
Tamika, are you also looking for other partners, like somebody like the League of Women Voters or someplace like that, if they were interested in jumping on board?
Sure.
Sure? Okay.
There's our Radnor president of the Radnor League of Women Voters sitting in the front row of our meeting.
I didn't see you there.
But let's transition quickly, if we could, into a conversation that we've been wanting to complete for some time now, and that is what we are going to look for in 2019 as the goals of this committee. We've reviewed what we have done previously, but I think it's time to land on where we want to go in 2019. So, Mr. Petiti, would you like to kick that conversation off for us?
Sure. So it looks like we had two goals that we were in agreement with to bring forward from last year into this year, and those are the second two you'll see on the slide there that were directed mainly to government relations related work. But in thinking about it, if we're all okay with those two still, and thinking about it in the interim from last month about a communications related goal, it did occur to me that perhaps we want to think about developing one, if only because you'll recall the surveys that were done over the past 2 years with parents, staff, and the community. Certain things were put into place as a result of those surveys, communications related. I could just go through a quick list of them. We went over this last year, but just so the committee remembers or recalls, we did some changes to the reader. We did we brought in a third-party service to make sure our website can be mined easier for incorrections, misspellings, broken links, etc., and also accessibility. We're using School Messenger more, our alert system to communicate with parents. We've moved to Schoology for much of the teacher posting around classroom news, and we're going to be phasing out teacher web pages entirely over the course of this year so they can focus solely on Schoology posting, and then we'll have a directory for teachers only in the public-facing side of the site. And most importantly, I think one of the important things is we took a look at the video offerings in the district, and we started in January 2018 to do a study and evaluation of our video offerings. And that led to the creation of a YouTube channel. That led to Ms. Crone in the TV studio being moved from the supervision of the high school principal to the communications office. So now she works under us so we can have more direct communication and contact around what's going on the TV station. And we've also looked at the Rad TV Club to see how that's structured, how we can enhance the club's offering and how student productions are done. And recently we also created a form for teachers to complete that if they want video support help, instead of it being an ad hoc system, they have a form, they can complete what they need, who they might need assistance from, and they can get that video support. So along those lines, I'm interested in recommending a communications related goal that has to do with continuing this video study, and then I kind of put something together that could be a starting point for how this goal could sound. And I'll just read it to all of you. To continuing the evaluation of video service in Radnor Township School District that began in January 2018 with the goal of increasing the variety and availability of programming both online and on the district's TV channel, as well as developing a sustainable student, staff, and district video production process. So that was kind of a shot at how we could take what's been done with video and then move it to the next level and hopefully get it all complete and tied up by the end of this school year.
Okay, committee, what do you think of adding that as our third goal? Because I think at our last meeting, we did agree that the bottom two would go forward as ongoing goals for 2019. Does anybody have any comments, feedback, suggestions, questions?
Michael, do you have that? You could put it up on the screen for us, just as
I might be able to type it.
or read it again more slowly.
I can read it more slowly.
That's fine. I heard.
Variety of
scribbled
processing
down parts of
speeds
it.
on,
Yes,
the
sorry.
committee here. I'm one of the slower ones, I get it.
So it would be to continue the evaluation of video services in the district that originally began in January 2018 with the goal of increasing the variety and availability of programming both online and on the district's television station, as well as developing a sustainable student, staff, and district video production process going forward.
How do you feel about that, Sarah? She's still writing. Does anybody in the meantime who isn't writing have any concerns, comments, questions, feedback?
Well, one of the things I'd like to see us do, since we can do surveys, is a benchmark of the quality that we're offering. I think quality needs to be in there, okay? I also would like to see who does monitor our television station. I watch it. It's kind of haphazardly put together. So if we were to get a benchmark, I think we'd actually be able to move it up rather quickly, I would hope. But that's my own personal opinion. So it's great to have a goal. I think we need to have better access. The teachers would have better access. The community would be able to view it. I'd like to see what it is right now. How does the community view it? We're saying we're pushing different things out. Okay, we're doing surveys in the community. We're doing this. We're doing that. The most the one that I guess is the most accessible to people out there who have televisions would just be to put on our channel. And how are we doing with that? How often is that watched? How is the scheduling done? Do people know when to put the different things on? I think it also gives opportunities for the school students to put shows together, to put little vignettes. We have a theater department. There's a lot of things that we can do with that. We have, now that we have, who is the one that's working with us? Forgive me.
Nikki Crone.
Nikki
the
Crone,
TV studio.
who's been at the TV studio for quite a while, actually.
Decades, yeah, 20 years or so.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, we would, we have everything I think we need. We have the tools, we just have to begin to use them more effectively. So I would like to see us, before we start on a goal, where are we?
Well, let me answer that question for you. I can. One of the questions that we asked in the public communication survey last April was, how regularly do you watch the TV station? Now, we had 219 responses from the general public, so non-RTSD parents. So of those folks, 3% said they regularly watch the channel. To do some comparison, we had, I should say, let me back up. 57% are aware the channel exists.
Okay.
Okay. 96% say they tune in each month, but that's 83% under an hour, and 13% 1 to 3 hours a month. Parents said about 3% is the regularly accessed the television station for ongoing news. To compare that to the 89% that access the website. So,
well, what do they access the website for?
To gain information about the district.
Yeah, to gain information, but I think we're looking at it in two different ways. If you're looking at it from a broadcaster, we have some experienced people here, actually. How do you increase the amount of people that watch your show? It's the quality of what you're watching, quality and the consistency of what you're watching, and knowing when to tune in. Okay, that's, I won't use the word non-existent, but we've left room for improvement with that. Do you watch television regularly? That question is a loaded question. What's regular to me is not regular to somebody else, okay? So what I'm saying is, I think it's a great idea, and I think we should move forward on that goal, but let's tighten that goal up. And if we're looking to increase viewership, if that's what we might want to do, because that way we also will be able to send other things home. We could do, I know Lower Merion does a summation of a meeting where they sit down with the chairs and they say, what do you guys discuss? They talk about what they discussed at the meeting. And then that's broadcasted out so people can watch that. There's a lot of things that we could do. And I think one of the reasons why I'm a little passionate about this, because I don't know how much longer I'm going to be here. And I'm looking back over my 20 years.
You okay? Feeling all right?
I'm feeling fine.
Okay.
I'm feeling fine. But I'm looking back over 20 years, and I can't say these are things that I thought we should have put in place, and we didn't. And this is one of them. I've been saying so many things for so many years that I'm getting a little bit fed up with myself, saying, just sitting here and going, well, that would have been nice to do. Well, we try to do that year. We try to do it this time. We try to do it that time. We've tried many, many times. We've been unsuccessful with it. So I think it's a great goal, and I think if we get a benchmark on it and we complete that goal, it'll do a great service for the whole entire community.
Well, I must say that since we talked about this as a formal study last year, we were able to make some real progress. And one of the things that we were able to survey alumni. We surveyed alumni who went through the studio. We surveyed students who currently use the studio. We got alumni from 2000 all the way to 2018 to respond. Only year we missed was 2007. And we confirmed through the alumni, at least, that it was an invaluable formative experience for them, just using the TV studio, working in there. We've got some people that really went on to work for WB, for Fox, for BuzzFeed. I mean, these people have really made a career out of video production, and according to them, due to a lot of the work they've done in the studio. What I wanted to do is bring that work further out into the public and maybe polish it a little bit. Because one of the things that those students also said was there's a lack of structure and there's a lack of time. They don't have enough time. And through working with the video production teacher and Mr. Bechtold at the high school, and they have actually assigned an administrator to work directly with the studio there now. So one of the assistant principals is actually kind of looking to help the studio out. I feel like we're making progress in formalizing the studio and formalizing our programming. And then when you add on the fact that we have to populate a new YouTube channel with programming, as well as considering what we're doing with live streaming. So do we want to start live streaming sports? Do we want to start live streaming musicals? Do we want to? That's a question that we're going to have to answer down the line. And to get to that question and answer, we should start with, cleaning up our current house.
Right.
You got it.
And then next step.
I'm very mindful of the time, but we started a couple minutes late. I had a question. For those of us who might not pay for cable, is there another way to watch Radnor Television? Is it all available on YouTube, or just the school board meetings are available on YouTube?
So
Is there another way to access it online?
most of the programming that we show on the channel, we replicate and stream. We post on the YouTube channel as well.
Okay.
So most of the program, aside from like the slides and the stuff you'll see in between TV programs, you'll see on YouTube as well.
Okay.
I would love to open it up for more questions and comment, but that doesn't, if we don't do it tonight, doesn't mean that we can't start next month on this very subject. So I want to thank everybody for their participation so far, and maybe this is where we pick it up for our next meeting. And I think that the board, with a head nod, the committee agrees we should incorporate that as our third goal. So you have our
I think we should
blessing.
make it our first goal.
Okay.
All right.
So you have our blessing, and we thank you that we at least wrap that up, and we will dive into it more deeply next time. In the interest of time, I would ask if there's any really pressing public comment so that we can move into our next meeting without too much further delay. Is there any public comment that's really pressing that hasn't been asked already?
Make it quick.
Thank you.
I know the time, because this is based on our speaker. And I just wanted to let you know I have the school districts that are really struggling are closer than you think they are. And I have a friend that teaches at Darby. The classrooms, some are not heated. And that's the school that may be closing their library. She teaches 80 to 120 hours a week, 5 different courses, because the sub-availability is ridiculous. So again, I know in years past, Radnor has discussed, and it's been brought up and addressed, Radnor does not need our funding. And so if we're looking at, I understand bringing the Pennsylvania, what has been promised, up to the level that it was promised in federal government, but another thing may be to consider we do not need the state funding, and there are schools and districts very, very close to us. The kids can't get educated in the middle of the winter without heat. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And with that, if there's no other public comment, we will conclude the meeting and see you all next month. Thank you.